Yeah, so I got some hot shit to talk about tonight. Matter of fact, I'm going to talk about it because you know, you ever have those moments where you hit the peak of festivity? Well, I'm one of those. I'm at one of those moments right now, and I'm gonna tell you something. You know, people say, "Oh, well, you know, you shouldn't be angry. You should be gentle and kind." And listen, I'm gonna tell you something. Anger is different than malice, because if you're angry and malicious, then you're liable to hurt somebody. But I'm not malicious. I have no desire to hurt anybody. I have no desire to hurt anything. But I am in the mood to tear some shit down. And that's kind of where I am. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pause. Go ahead and pause the Funkadelic for a minute. So this is where I am today. And I had said that I was going to talk about this. I was going to talk about this with Aaron. And maybe we'll come back to it when Aaron comes back next week. And maybe we'll do something else. Who knows? But this is my thing right now. I believe that the church is a complete fuck up. I'm not saying some churches or this church or that church. I'm saying the church. The church is a complete fuck up right now. Now, some of y'all are gonna hear that and get pissed, and you're gonna flip the channel, and you know. And I get it because nobody likes to hear that they're wrong. So I'm going to give you an out, and it's this. Because when I say the church is a complete fuck up, I'm not saying the people in the church are complete fuck ups. Although there are some fuck ups in leadership. And by the way, if you're offended by the use of the word fuck, right now, change the channel. Because I'm going to say it a whole fucking lot. Because, and listen, I got to say this too, because this is a caveat, a disclaimer. I'm not just cussing for the sake of cussing. You know, that's not my deal. The deal is that some people are more offended by the use of the word fuck than they are about children in cages, than they are about black people being murdered, that they are about a president who grabs women by the pussy. They're more offended by this one word. And meanwhile, it's like Nero fiddling while Rome burns. And y'all, I'm tired. I'm tired. And so when I say that the church is a complete fuck up, I mean that with all sincerity, with all candor, with every fiber of my being. Because here's the deal. This country was founded, and listen, I hear this all the time. They say, you know, if it weren't, we had to compromise on slavery in order to get this great union. Well, compromise that entails the subjugation of an entire race of people is not what you call a good compromise. That's a fuck up. Compromise that takes away the land, the culture, the heritage of the people that were here before the Europeans showed up. To say that we're compromising that to get this republic, that's a complete fuck up. And let me tell you this, because the church is completely complicit in this, because if you ask any Christian, they'll say that this is a Christian nation. And mind y'all, this is my first scotch of the day, so this is not a Scotch-filled tirade. Just so you know. I'm really just getting warmed up. So the church was complicit in slavery. It was complicit in the decimation of Native Americans. It was complicit. It was complicit in the internment of Japanese Americans. It was complicit in the denial of suffrage and equal rights to women. It was complicit in the inhibition of the civil rights movement. It was complicit in prohibition. It is complicit in the drug, basically in how drugs are viewed in this country. It's complicit in the denial of simple human rights for LGBTQ people. The church has been complicit in all of this shit. The church is a complete fuck up. Now, I was talking to a brother. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and call him out by name. Irvin Reed. Love this brother. Love him. Man, this is a guy, he's what you would call a traditional preacher in terms of how he preaches. But what he's preaching is really off the beaten path. And he's saying some stuff and doing some things that are helping people get free. But we're talking, and it's like this whole thing about the church has been a willing partner in everything that has been done against humanity in this country. And what's amazing to me is that this whole thing about black people being killed by police, this is something that if the church was really about its stuff, if the church was really about this person they call Jesus, if the church was really about love, they would have been the first to stand up and nip this shit in the bud. But they didn't. As a matter of fact, your M1A1, that means common, that's military nomenclature, the common church, the mainstream church, what they've done is basically they facilitated it with their silence. The church is a complete fuck up. And this was interesting because when these things happen, let's go back to Trayvon Martin, because this is where things really started to get traction. Because here Trayvon Martin, he was guilty of wearing a hoodie in a gated community, and so the neighborhood watch, now this is not even cops, y'all, the neighborhood watch shot and killed him. And then Mike Brown in Missouri, you know, it's funny how instead of the church standing up and saying that it was wrong for George Zimmerman to kill Trayvon Martin, instead of the church standing up and saying it was wrong for Darren Wilson to kill Mike Brown, instead of the church stepping up and saying it was wrong for Breonna Taylor to be murdered in her own home, or for you know, the brother down in Texas, and you know, his name is escaping me, and y'all forgive me, but he was in his own house. And instead of the church speaking up and saying, you know, enough's enough, it's about time to shut this shit down. And mind you, because Christians are the majority in this country, and they wield a certain political power, especially now that their guy is in the White House, they could have simply spoken up and said, you know something? It's time for y'all to fix this. Now, a lot of really well-meaning, well-intentioned, loving, genuinely human white people are marching, protesting, and putting economic and social pressure, spiritual pressure on to change this. But the folks that are doing this, y'all, they ain't your M1A1 evangelicals. This is not the regular church. These are the people who are involved in the protests against these wanton summary executions of black folks. These white people are people that have already abandoned the church. They've already identified that the church is a complete fuck up. Now, these people in the church, the evangelicals, they could say, you know what? Enough's enough. Put pressure on their congressman, the president, and there could have been an executive order, there could have been legislation, there could have been all of these things that just simply fixed it. But no. This is what your M1 evangelical says. They shouldn't have broken the law. They should have just complied. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe the officer had a bad day. Maybe. But the reality is that the church, instead of speaking out against this, the church has tacitly endorsed it. The church is a complete fuck up. And with the LGBTQ situation, trying to deny people basic rights. Listen, let me tell you something. Here's the epitome of privilege in America. If your people have never had to go to court to have your basic human rights affirmed, you have privilege. You have privilege. And so if you are black in America, if you are LGBTQ in America, if you're a woman in America, if you're any minority, if you're Native American in America, you've had to have some ruling from the judicial bench to codify your basic humanity. And the church could fix that. You know that the whole situation with the LGBTQ issue could have been resolved by simply saying, a flat reading of the Bible is not a sufficient way by which we can govern people. Matter of fact, that any reading of any religious book cannot be used to govern people. Because if that's what you do, what you have is theocracy and not democracy. And people say, oh, well, Derek, we don't have a democracy anyway. It's a constitutional republic. Okay, bullshit. The reality is that if there's some voting going on, there's a democracy. Yeah, it may be structured as a republic, but guess what? People have the right to vote on things. They have the right to decide. And matter of fact, the government works for the people, not the people working for the government. That whole paradigm is twisted. But I'm going to tell you something that y'all hear me. November's coming up. It's coming up fast. I mean, we're less than 50 days before the election. And I'm going to tell you something. If you guys vote Republican this time, if you guys give Trump another 4 years, then what you're going to have is theocracy. You're going to have rule from the sanctuary instead of rule from the seat of government. The church is a complete fuck up. Did I already say that? It's a fuck up. And here's the other thing. Matter of fact, Christianity in America is dying. It's in a decline. And I'm going to tell you one great thing that came out of this pandemic is that a lot of churches, because I don't want to confuse churches with the church, but I'm still on the church is a complete fuck up. A lot of these churches are going under. Now, I don't like to root for anybody's failure. I don't. I love to see everybody succeed. However, this whole thing about these churches, what you're finding out is whether or not, God is really doing something there. Because if God ordains it, truly ordains it, I mean, if God is behind it, if God smiles on it, if God favors it, then guess what? God's going to make sure it survives. God is going to work it out because she's God. But the church is a complete fuck up. Now, of course, some of you will say, well, not my church. My church is great. Y'all know that the majority of Americans say that Congress is doing a really shitty job. But the majority of people in America think their congressman is doing a fantastic job. And the majority of Christians think the church is in trouble. But the same majority think that their church is okay. But I'm here to tell you, your church is not okay. The church is a complete fuck up. Now, this is the other thing. That it's funny how all of these Christian folk, these good Christian folk, they're out here railing against this Netflix show called Cuties. Because you have these scantily clad 11 and 12-year-old girls, and it's a travesty what they're doing to our youth and how they're exploiting them sexually. Well, the storyline isn't like that. It's basically how one girl overcomes the religious abuse that she suffered to be who she chooses to be. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I don't have daughters, but if I did, I wouldn't want them going around scantily clad. Now, that's me. However, I have no right to judge any other parent. However, I find it interesting that the same people who are trying to cancel Netflix, they post it all over social media, cancel Netflix, the same people that want to cancel Netflix are the same people who are okay with their president grabbing women by the pussy. The church is fucked up. It's a complete fuck up. Because if it weren't for the evangelicals in America, Trump would have no defense. At some point, reality, sensibility, logic, and basic human decency would kick in and say, you know something? Enough's enough. Time to get rid of this guy. But instead, the same people who are going around talking about cancel Netflix. I can't have Netflix because Netflix, they're exploiting children. Support a guy who has had nothing but sexual contempt for women. The church is a complete fuck up. And you can sit up and justify this, and it's funny how Christians will play hopscotch with verses of scripture that may actually liberate people, that may actually reveal the freedom that humanity is supposed to enjoy. But they'll play connect the dots with the same scripture to try to justify oppression, subjugation, racial discrimination, economic disparity. They'll go to the ends of the earth. The same people who rail against abortion are silent about these girls down in under control of the ICE who are being hysterectomized involuntarily. Same church, y'all. Same people. The church is a complete fuck up. And it's amazing to me, again, we're talking about 50 days from the election. Kentucky. Your senior senator is Mitch McConnell. As long as he's been in the Senate, Kentucky's fortunes have steadily declined. They are headed toward the bottom in reading. They're headed toward the bottom in healthcare, headed toward the bottom in infant mortality, toward the bottom in every measurable category. And yet and still, you try to put the same guy in office over and over and over again, and you do this under the auspices, under the audacious auspices of that this man is a Christian, and that we must vote Christian values. You know, I'm at the point now where Christian values don't mean shit. Not a goddamn thing. Because these Christian values swallow camels and strain at gnats. They major in the minors. And it's horrible. It's funny how people say, well, this country is losing its moral foundation. It's heading to hell in a handbasket. Let me tell you something. If some of these things like granting rights to LGBTQ couples or stopping police brutality or ending the desecration of native lands with pipelines and shit, if all of that is Christian values, or if it's endorsed by the church, y'all, you don't want any part of that. Sinclair Lewis said that when fascism comes to America, it will come carrying a cross and draped in a flag. Y'all, that's where we are now. We are no different than Nazi Germany or Germany in 1933. No different. The same things that, you know, the Nazis came in saying, we want to make Germany great. The Nazis came in and said, we want to revitalize the German economy. We want to make Germany an economic powerhouse and the envy of the world. We want to make Germany the most massive war horse in the world. Sound familiar? And let me tell you something. Just like how Germany couldn't have done what it did without the church, neither will America, because the church is a complete fuck up. We talk about, now the president is saying that he wants to end any teaching that he considers to be un-American. Y'all, that's fascism. That's dictatorship. That's, you know, ruthless control 101. 101. Okay? And all of this is happening, and the church isn't saying anything. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. That in 2016, when Donald Trump went into this, that should have been the end. At that point, the church, if the church was being the church should have spoke up and said, you know, that's somebody that does not represent our values. But that's not what happened, y'all. This current situation, and here's the other thing, the pandemic, oh my God. Listen, if you have to be out and about and you have to be around other human beings, just wear a fucking mask. It's not a lot to ask. Now, I understand if you have asthma or COPD or you have bronchitis, you have something going on like that. I understand that. I don't want anybody to put their health at risk. But at the same time, if that's your testimony, then a mask should be part of your agenda because you don't want to get this COVID-19 if you have any of that. And you don't want to, if you're asymptomatic, you don't want to be the one to give it to somebody. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. When, you know, I don't believe in judgment. You know, that when people die, that they face this judgment. I don't believe that. But I do believe that you know, we'll have a purview of time that we didn't have before. And I'm going to tell you something. The person who showed up at the Trump rally in Tulsa, who was patient zero, who gave it to Herman fucking Cain, that person is going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe, all I had to do was wear a mask and this man could have lived 10 more years. It is, you know, but the church, listen, churches are out here telling us that we can't have services or that we have to observe social distancing. This is like slavery. Y'all, let me tell you something. That's not slavery. Because you're not getting your ass beat. You're not being strung up by the neck on a tree. You're not having dogs or pigs sicked on you. No, y'all, you're not working for free. You're not building the wealth of a nation on your backs. That's not slavery. But this is what is being parroted in church pulpits. The church is a complete fuck up. Did I already mention the church is a complete fuck up? And, you know, it's like people buying into these conspiracy theories, QAnon and all this other crap, right? And I'm going to tell you something. It amazes me that Christian folk and some really, what I thought were some really intelligent folks have bought into this shit hook, line, and sinker, and they parrot out, they just repeat it, and they're like telling people, you don't know the truth. You're sheeple. No, dog, I'm not a sheeple. Because I've learned that what we're dealing with is something that is completely fucked up, and I don't want any more part of it. Listen, I'm going to say this. Unless it's like a wedding or a funeral, I don't care if I ever go into another church. Honestly don't. And I'll say this as a former pastor. I don't need to go into nobody else's church. I don't. Because at the end of the day, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to give a quarter to black churches because by and large, you know, with all of the police brutality and everything, every black-led, predominantly black church, they ought to be out here, I mean, grinding on the pavement to put an end to this stuff. But they're not. They're staying in the background because somebody has told them, well, we just let Jesus fix it. And that's the funny thing. Like when I was in the Grace Camp, and I would say, you know, I want to end police brutality, and I want y'all to speak up, man. Because listen, I've spoken up for y'all about pro-life, about you know, defending, you know, the unborn. So can y'all hook a brother up and speak out for the born? But no. Oh, Derek, just Give it over to Jesus. Oh, Derek, just pray on it. Oh, Derek, don't talk about social justice and political things. Just keep talking about love and grace, Derek. Just don't rock the boat, Derek. Don't. This is the great. And I'm gonna tell you something. The grace folks, they had a golden opportunity to really pivot this whole thing. All they had to do was be on the right side of history and say, you know something, this whole thing about police brutality, all this is messed up. And because we believe in God's grace and we believe in God's love, that we want to extend this love and extend this grace to everybody, and we want to bring this to an immediate halt. The matter of fact, the grace folk, they could have stood up on behalf of the LGBTQ community for marriage equality, for equal rights, for equal property assessment, all of these things. They could have done these things. They could have been the anti-church. They could have spoke up and done something, but instead, no, what they're doing the same shit as everybody else. No different. All they do is they just basically candy coat the turd. Yeah, I did say that. Because basically, you know, what all the grace movement is basically religious turd polishing. Sorry, but that's the truth. You know, you can put a candy coated shell on a turd just like you do an M&M, but I'm gonna tell you something. You bite into that rascal, and you're gonna find out how nasty it really is. And that's what happens with the grace movement. You bite into that. It seems all shiny and pretty when you're looking at it from the outside, but when you get to it from the inside, you find that it's just as shitty as anything else on the inside. The church is a complete fuck up. And you can sit up and try to justify this. You can connect the dots with it. Listen, I don't care. And I'm going to tell you something. For those of you who are watching this, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, oh my God, Derek has just really gone off the deep end this time. Now, I haven't gone off the deep end. I haven't gone off the deep end. Because I haven't spoken out about anything that goes on behind the scenes. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about institutions. Because I have no intention to harm anyone. However, this institution that we call the church, which is really just an extension of religion, needs to die. Because the true church is right here. It's in your heart. It's in your mind. And it isn't something that has to come to you. It's not something that you have to say the magic prayer and get dipped in water to get. This has been in you forever. And you've been in it forever. The true church is humanity. And I could go on and on and on about this. But it's amazing the things that the church will tolerate in the name of Jesus. But I'm going to tell you something. For every really sentient human being out there, if you have a shred of morality left, if you have a shred of human decency left, this is the moment. This is the moment for you to wake up. This is the moment for you to embrace this consciousness. This is the moment when you begin to embrace humanity. I'm going to tell you something. It's like people say, oh, well, you know, you got to love the sinner but hate the sin. Listen, all sin is what you aren't doing. That's what sin is to you. But when you sit idly by and allow oppression to continue, I think that that's a greater sin than any sexual sin. I think that if you want to honor God, that you'll honor God's. That means honoring all humanity. And that anytime something comes up that oppresses, subjugates, or otherwise puts humanity into bondage, that you need to wake up and put an end to that. Because you have no right to tell anybody what to think or what to do. And I don't either. Don't get it twisted. I'm not telling you what to think. And I'm not telling you what to do. You grown. Make up your own damn mind. Figure it out. But what you don't have the right to do is to tell anybody else what to do or how to do it. But what you need to understand is that where your rights end, that's where mine begin. And my rights end where yours begin. And that if anything that I do denies you the right to basic humanity, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that, my friends, is actually what you would call sin. So, I think that that's it. I'm ready to get into my scotch in a big way. But I'm going to tell you something. What this COVID has done, what this presidency has done, has exposed the church for the fuck up it really is. That's sad truth. And you can slice, dice, and julienne that any way you want. And I'm going to tell you something. People are going to see this and they're going to be like, they're going to want to argue. They're going to want to debate. And you know something? I'm not debating you. I'm not defending my position. I've said what I have to say, and I'm done. Now, it's up to you to take this, and if you choose to process it, that's great. If you choose to ignore it, that too is great. If it pisses you off and you want to scream, go scream in the corner, because if you scream at me, I don't give a fuck. And that's where I am, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The church is a complete fuck up. And you know, you could sit up and try to justify that. You could try to prove me wrong. But I'm going to tell you something, that as long as the church continues to endorse these things either explicitly or implicitly, and what I mean by explicitly or implicitly, explicitly if they just actually say, well, that's the way it ought to be, or implicitly to look at it and just ignore it and act as if it's okay. In either case, there you are. So if you have any questions, comments, feel free to hit me up at www.derekday.com and click the link marked contact, and it'll send me an email. And whether you like me or not, whether you agree with me or not, I will respond to your email expeditiously. Also, you can check me out on the Heretic Happy Hour, where I'm joined by Katie Valentine, Matthew DiStefano, and Keith Giles. And do you know that you can actually support the Heretic Happy Hour on Patreon with a regular contribution? You will ensure that this thing you call Christianity will be discussed by somebody without a religious filter. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, or I'm not LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, Instagram or Twitter. And my handle is Derek E. Day. And go to YouTube and check out all the videos where you can watch my spiritual journey, where I've gone from very legalistic to very, very free. And at the end of the day, if what you hear does not either bring you to freedom or help you to grow in it, then everything that you hear outside of that complete and utter bullshit. So until Sunday, I'll be back with the Sunday start, some quick wisdom to get your week going. Until then, peace and hair grease. Namaste. I see the light in you. Namaste. I see the God in you. And I love you.